Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Copenhagen in Denmark and revisit one of the famous Danish gypsy breweries. And you've seen me review many beers from these guys on the channel before, but it feels like a little while since I had something from them actually. So for this one then, we are going to have a look at yet another beer from Mikkeller, the original Danish gypsy brewery, I guess we should say. And this is part of their new Brewery Classics range that they're doing. So this is a reiteration, a rebrew if you like, of Traeblod, which translates into English as Traeblod if I'm not mistaken. It comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is an imperial stout brewed with maple syrup and coffee. So yeah, this one will be a little bit of a monster. This was brewed at Mikkeller's brewery in San Diego over in California on the American West Coast, and I don't remember seeing this one before. I know that it has been released over the last couple of years. I think there seems to be a new version of this beer every year, but I honestly don't remember seeing this particular beer before. But we got this here in Sweden as part of the Tillfällig temporary assortment through Systembolaget on the 2nd of March 2020. And you know, I just felt I haven't had an imperial stout from Mikkeller for a long time. This one sounded quite interesting. I love coffee beans and stouts, one of the most interesting adjuncts I think that you can put in beers, and I just kind of thought, well, why not? So nice to feature Mikkeller on the channel once again, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. A 12% monster for you this time. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this beer then. Very, very curious to see how it turns out. So yeah, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Mikkeller before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly because I live very close to Denmark and I love my Danish beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Mikkeller then, on to my brewery notes. So Mikkeller, as I've told you already, are one of the famous Danish gypsy breweries. The company was founded back in 2006 by Christian Keller and Mikkeller Bjergso, although it's now run exclusively by Bjergso, who used to be a science and maths teacher. But again, these guys were very influenced by the American craft beer movement, and they basically started out as the home brewing experimentations of Christian and Mikkel and grew from there. Apparently the reason that it's only Mikkel involved in the company now was that Christian wanted to kind of focus on brewing a kind of core range of beers, whereas Mikkel wanted to keep up the whole experimentation thing, and that of course is what Mikkeller has become very, very famous for. The name is a kind of conjoining of their two names, if you like, but Christian, from what I understand, went on to work for a magazine in Copenhagen writing about music and things like that. So yeah, but for a long time these guys operated solely as a gypsy brewery, so they didn't have their own facility but brewed a variety of host breweries in America, Norway, Scotland and also in Belgium. For a long time most of their beer was brewed at the Brewery in Lochristenhoofde in Ghent in Belgium. Quite a bit of their beer is still brewed down there from what I understand, and their home base was the Mikkeller bar on Victoriagade in Copenhagen, quite close to the central railway station, and I do recommend that you go and check that out. I do have an out and about video that I filmed there that I need to edit together and publish, so fingers crossed we can make that happen quite soon. But these guys also had a collaboration bar, or they still do, with Toil, which is up in Nørrebro in Copenhagen, and the founders of Toil are former students of Mikkel's. So yeah, that's the Mikkeller and Friends bar, and that's one that I do need to go and check out actually as well. I've never been up there. But in April of 2016, Mikkeller took over AleSmith's former brewery in San Diego after they moved on to a larger space, and then the following year in 2017, they announced that they were going to establish a second brewery in Citi Field, which is home of the New York Mets baseball team, and that was over on the East Coast in New York City. But these days, they've got various different locations now. They're not so much a gypsy brewery anymore, but you know, they are brewing at their own locations in various different places. But they've got a location in Copenhagen which is called Baghavn, and this is where they experiment with different sour beers. Up there they've got 12 oak fodders ranging from 3,000 to 7,000 litres, and they've got a variety of different wine barrels and whiskey barrels and all of these kind of things that they're using up there. But the beers are brewed at Warpig's, which is a collaboration brew pub they have in the meatpacking district in Copenhagen with 3 Floyds from Munster in Indiana. That's definitely worth checking out as well. But the beers are taken up to the Valheim facility in Refosluhen, if I'm remembering how to pronounce the name of that district correctly. But they're in Refosluhen, kind of over in the eastern part of Copenhagen. The beers are taken up there, and that's where they undergo all the blending and aging and things like that. But yeah, they actually cultivate a lot of their own yeasts for the wild beers and things there as well. There's a tap room up at the Mikkeller Valheim place as well, which I would recommend that you check out. But yeah, it's a really interesting brewery, this one. Like I say, they have their brew pub, with 3 Floyds, the Warpig's brew pub, which is one of my favourite places to go in Copenhagen. But they've also got various other things in Copenhagen as well. They have the RampantLionReviews restaurants. There's 2 of those, which I would recommend you check out. Very, very authentic Japanese ramen, probably the most authentic I've found in Europe. There's the various different Mikkeller bars, the original one on Victoria Gade, which is worth checking out to see where the whole craft beer scene in Copenhagen started. And they've also got Brewed, which is right next door actually. But they've got bars in Barcelona, Madrid, Berlin, Warsaw, Bucharest, Stockholm, Tórshavn up in the Faroe Islands, Tokyo, Seoul, Taipei, and also in Shanghai. And there's various locations in San Diego and in Bangkok over in Thailand as well. So I think there is actually one in Singapore too, if I remember rightly these days. So yeah, Mikkeller have got different locations all over the place, lots of different bars. They're brewing most of their beer in San Diego these days from what I understand, but quite a bit of it is still being brewed at the De Proef Brewery in Le Christenhefte in Ghent in Belgium. So yeah, quite a lot of their stuff is still brewed down in Belgium. So most of their European beer comes from Belgium. Most of their American stuff is coming from San Diego, and we get quite a fair bit of their American stuff over here as well actually. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Mikkeller. As I said to you, these guys do lots and lots of different beers. They've probably released over 2,000 different beers over their lifetime now, and there's always new stuff coming out, so it's definitely worth having a go at some of their beers if you haven't already. But yeah, that's all we can say about them. If you want to learn more about Mikkeller, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. That is your history of Mikkeller. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is kind of typical of what you expect from Mikkeller. So yeah, brewed and canned by Mikkeller San Diego in California. So there you go. As you can see, my can took a little bit of a ding. I actually just had it on the floor when I was moving stuff around in the fridge, and it literally just fell over like this, and that was the dent that the can got. This was last night, so I kind of thought, well, I need to review this quite quickly now that the can is dented. But yeah, this is one American pint, 473 milliliters, a 12% Imperial Stout, like I said, with maple syrup and coffee in it. And I bought this beer, I believe, for 80 Swedish kroner. So a little bit more expensive, but again, it was just the fact that I hadn't had something from Mikkeller in quite some time. But yeah, this beer, so 80 Swedish kroners is roughly about €8, about £7.30 or something like that, £7.33 let's say, and I guess maybe about $9 American for it. So yeah, for a 12% Imperial Stout, that's nae bad. This beer is a little bit of a treat, of course. This is a kind of night-ending beer. But yeah, the artwork that you get on these Mikkeller beers is very, very distinctive. I forget the name of the guy that does this, but yeah, he's very well known these days because of his artwork that he does with Mikkeller. But yeah, 473 milliliter can, one American pint, which is a bit crazy for an Imperial Stout. A 330 might have been better. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Oh, here we go. A little bit of a pop as we open it up, and just a wee bit of beer coming out of it. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. As I said at the start of the video, I love a coffee stout. You know, that's mainly thanks to Dugas Brewery in Landvetter, just outside of Gothenburg here in Sweden. They did, years ago, they did a beer called the Key and the Sidamo Dimtu, and you know, those two beers were just awesome. You know, coffee beans for me, they're awesome adjuncts to add into beer. But yeah, just before the head on this beer disappears, you can see there's about a half finger of a frothy. I would say medium to dark tan. That's fading away to just be a very, very thin foamy layer on this one. It's going to leave a nice kind of ring around the edge of the glass there. But the beer itself is black as night. You're not going to find a beer much darker than that. When you shine the light through it, it does have a wee hint of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge there. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. So overall, it does seem pretty nice actually. I like how it appears, but you know, this is exactly what you would expect from an imperial stout. But yeah, like I was saying a second ago, you know, there's nothing surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. But as I was saying a second ago, when it comes to coffee beans, these things can be just as diverse as hops. You know, they can be grown in lots of different parts of the world, so you've got different water and soil compositions going in there that are going to affect the flavour of the coffee bean. But apparently the biggest factor when it comes to coffee beans is the MASL, the MASL, the meters above sea level. Basically, the higher you grow the coffee, the higher altitude at which you grow the coffee, the more sort of aromatic, citrusy and fruity like flavours you'll get out of it. It's really interesting. I've had some really interesting coffee stouts that have coffee from, you know, some from Indonesia, some from Brazil, some from Colombia, Rwanda, Ethiopia and a few other places in Africa as well, if I remember rightly. You get some really, really interesting coffee stouts these days, and it's a really cool way to kind of highlight the differences between the different coffee beans. It didn't say on the Untappd or anything like that exactly what coffee bean they'd used in this, so yeah, I'm really not sure exactly what coffee beans to expect out of this one, but we will comment on the coffee flavours in this beer as we get out. Maple syrup, of course, you know, that's quite an important ingredient as well, obviously, but I'm not as well versed in maple syrup as I am in coffee. I actually don't drink coffee outside of beers, but you know, since I got into coffee stouts and things, I have researched it quite a bit and I've got a fair idea. But yeah, the beer looks absolutely lovely. You can see the head has just kind of dissipated away to be a nice foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. I can get little whiffs of it already, and I think it's going to smell pretty damn awesome actually. So let's go for it. Oh yeah, that's just a lovely, lovely beer at 12% as well. It's a bit of a monster, but this was a treat. Like I said, this was a treat beer, absolutely. I don't know how I feel about these in in American pint cans. It feels like a little bit too much of a kind of very rich thing, if you like. You know, 250 mils of this or 200 mils or something would do me, to be honest, but that's it. It is a treat, as I say. But yeah, straight away when you go into this beer, it smells absolutely lovely. I mean, you can smell the coffee backbone and you can smell the maple syrup just kind of sweetening this thing up. It's a beautiful aroma on this beer. I could sit and smell it all day. And you know, it's exactly what you expect. This smells like a proper old school Mikkeller stout, you know. The Imperial Stout has evolved from the early days of Mikkeller. Pardon me, these days we're getting a lot of oaty, wheaty, you know, these big, thick, almost kind of pastry stout type things. The Imperial Stout has gotten a lot sweeter in recent years, but the old school stouts like this, the coffee stouts and things like that, I really, really enjoy these. And that was one of the main reasons why I got this one, because I looked up the beer when it appeared on the Systembolaget list, and it said it was one of the classic, one of their old school beers. So that was the main reason that I decided to go for this one, because I was unsure, and then when I was in the shop I was just like, you know, bugger it, just get it. So that was, you know, that's kind of what happened actually. I knew that it would be a good beer, but it you know, it smells absolutely lovely. So yeah, let's try and just break down the aroma of this beer then. Yeah, that is lovely. So straight away with this beer, we'll focus on the coffee beans first, because that's one of the central elements. You can feel that the maple syrup just kind of sits underneath the coffee, so you've got this nice layer of smooth, very sweet kind of brown sugar in there. It doesn't have a toasty element to it. It's very smooth and really just kind of sweet. If you get caramel, you know, it can be toasted, it can be highly kind of you know, it can be highly oily and things. It can be really like treacle and molasses like, but for me this beer really just comes across. It's just a smooth sweetness that kind of surrounds the coffee beans, if you like. But the coffee for me in this one comes across as being a very, very smooth roast, if you like. It's got a lovely smoothness to it. So of course you do get a wee bit of earthiness with it. You do get one or two little aromatic notes out of it. It almost comes across as being a little, the coffee bean almost comes across as being a little bit vanilla-like in some ways, come to think of it. But yeah, it's got a nice smooth roasty note to it. There's one or two little floral notes in there. And it's also, you know, it's also got just a wee touch of a kind of red fruity sort of thing. And I don't find this an overly aromatic or overly citrusy kind of coffee. It's a smooth roast. It's got a little bit of that sweet vanilla to it and maybe just a wee touch of a kind of slightly red fruity note to it. The coffee actually is not quite as pungent as I've had in other coffee stouts in recent times, but I think that's the maple syrup kind of sweetening up the whole beer, to be honest with you. The maple syrup and the coffee really kind of feel as if they're like this, just kind of, you know, one and the same. But I'm sure when we actually have a taste of the beer, we'll be able to taste these things more kind of individually, if you like. But the whole malty backbone of the beer here is, you know, it's got a nice oily brown sugary note to it. You've got that smoother kind of smooth roasty kind of coffee sort of thing in there. It's got a lovely kind of bread crusty sort of thing to it as well. It's got a lovely, how would you say, it's got just a lovely kind of, it's got a brown bready backbone to it, but it does at the same time have a wee touch of a well-fired bread crusty kind of quality, so I can really appreciate that about this one. So yeah, it's a really interesting sort of combination. This is a very the malty side of this beer and the adjuncty side of the beer just smells extremely smooth, and I really appreciate that about this one for sure. You can see the ices out there, the ice cream van. I got a fright actually when that came by. I was like, what the fuck is that? But yeah, forgot. Getting old. But yeah, the malty side of this beer is just lovely and smooth. You do get an element of chocolate out of this one. The beer gives you the impression of a kind of milky chocolate, you know, a 30-40% cocoa chocolate. You definitely get a bit of that towards the kind of front of the nose. Bit of vanilla in there. There's some woody undertones to the beer as well, definitely. Some nice kind of smooth woody undertones. And yeah, so smooth brown bread, a little bit of a toasty backbone, toasty bread crusty backbone there. Some chocolate in there, like I say, a sort of milky kind of chocolate, a 30-40% cocoa kind of thing. And yeah, it just comes across as really smooth, nice bready, kind of brown bready elements in there as well. But it smells like the coffee and the sort of maple syrupy elements are just kind of sitting on top of that, and we've covered exactly how they smell already. So yeah, this is a lovely smelling beer, I have to say. One or two wee nutty elements pushing their way out of this one as well. On the hoppy side of things, before we taste the beer, on the hoppy side of things then, I would say this beer, it does have a wee bit of earthiness to it. You get a nice bit of floral aromaticity to it as well, which is good. So yeah, nice kind of floral aromaticity in there. How would you say? It's I would say yeah, it's got a little bit of, it's got quite a bright floral aromatic note to it. There's a little bit of grassiness in there as well. So yeah, I mean, I really like how that side of it goes together. The green component in this beer is not too prominent. It does take a back seat, obviously, to the adjuncts and the malt in there, which is what you'd expect from an imperial stout, but you do still get a few wee green elements out of it. A little bit of grassiness, a little touch of floral character, a little bit of earthiness. The longer you age this beer, of course, the more that's going to drop out. I didn't have much of an option with this one because I dented the can, but there you go. But anyway, on the fruity side of things, this beer, the fruits come across as kind of soft and juicy for me. There's definitely a bit of a kind of juicy plum to this beer. You do get a wee tiny touch of raisin, but not a lot. There's some figgy notes in there, and I get a bit of a kind of black, I get a mix of blackberry and blackcurrant in this one. It's kind of typical. These are sort of typical fruity notes that you'll get from an imperial stout. You'll often get a bit of plum and raisin, a bit of a fig, and then, you know, some kind of more juicy berryish type qualities out of the beer. So yeah, definitely getting a good bit of that coming out of this one. So the aroma is kind of what you would expect from a coffee and maple syrup stout. It's a bit old school though. You can definitely tell from the smoothness and things in this beer. The beer comes across as really kind of old school actually. So yeah, just pay attention to the aroma a little bit. You know, take a little bit of time to mull it over before you taste the beer. But I think it's time for us now to have a go at this one. So yeah, this one is the Traeblod, if I've not got the translation wrong, from Mikkeller, brewed at their San Diego brewery over in California. A 12% imperial coffee and maple syrup stout. This should be pretty damn awesome. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's I'm just going to say straight away, that's a ridiculous beer. Oh, there we go. Yeah, don't have anyone to share this one tonight with tonight, so this one is all mine. This is my evening beer. So yeah, this is just a monster. You know, as I say, over the last couple of years, I've really gotten into my coffee stouts, and this thing is just a monster. But it's a beautiful beer, absolutely. Yeah, just thumbs up to Mikkeller once again. You know, you really can taste the difference with these sort of old school stouts, if you like. You can sort of, when you go back to beers like this, it's kind of interesting just to see how much the imperial stout style has evolved over time. But as I say, you know, you always get, I think in recent times, in very recent times I should say, and we're talking about, you know, late 2020, early 2021, the beer scene really has started to re-diversify. There's more West Coasters, more black IPAs and things like that. We're actually starting to get more old school imperial stouts like this, whereas before it was all about the pastries and the big sweet things. And it's refreshing to see. It really is nice to go back to something a bit more kind of old school, such as this. So yeah, and as I say, I think this, I don't remember seeing this beer at all. I'd never heard of this one when I saw it come through the Systembolaget list, and I saw it was coffee and maple syrup. And when I see coffee stouts these days, I'm always tempted. Then I saw it in the shop, and I just thought, you know, bugger it, why not? And that was it. And I'm glad that I did get this. I really am glad that I did get it. This is another lovely beer, proper old school Mikkeller this. So yeah. So yeah, where to start with this one? Where to start with it? You know, it's so well done. It really is just very well done. I think this beer is more, the focus should be more on the aftertaste and how the flavours kind of evolve out of it. That's what I would say about this one. It kind of feels, when you first take the beer in and it's on your tongue, it feels like everything kind of merges together, if you like, and it does its thing. But yeah, it works, you know, really nicely. So yeah, I do like this, absolutely. I do like it. Yeah, where to go with this then? Where to start? So what I'll say about the beer then, in the middle of your palate, you'll feel it actually comes across as really smooth. It takes a while for that roasty, toasty, you know, bread crusty, well-fired bread crusty sort of thing to come out. But that is the backbone of the beer. You can feel that straight away. There is that roasty, toasty, black malty backbone to this. I wouldn't be surprised if Carafa, you know, the Weirmann Carafa malt is one of the things in the backbone here. It doesn't seem harsh enough to be Special B, but you know, there could be a little bit of that in there. But then again, there's other stuff in this. You know, this one, it says in its bill it has, it's got wheat in it. This, so that's probably part of the reason for the big smoothness that this beer has. You know, the big kind of wheaty elements. But yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, you do get that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty backbone. On top of that, you get a very smooth, kind of layer of a kind of brown bready sort of thing. It's like a mix between wholemeal, but it has the more kind of it has more of a thickness. It has a more kind of thick rye-like thing to it, which I do like. So yeah. So yeah, that's the backbone of your beer, the roasty, toasty backbone, kind of bread crusty thing, bit of a smooth brown bread, you know, on top of that. And yeah, you will feel that the beer dries out a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste. If you go to the front corners of your tongue, then go diagonally back, you will feel a few woody notes push their way out of the beer a bit later on. And likewise, if you go to the centre of your palate and then come forward, you will get a little bit of a nutty quality just before you reach that border with the front third of your palate. So I really appreciate how how that side of things goes together. But pardon me, losing my voice. But yeah, I really can kind of appreciate how that side of things goes together as well. So yeah, this beer it is really interesting. That it's got a really nice kind of solid backbone to it. But on top of that, this is when you get the coffee. You get the coffee beans kind of coming out of this one, and the coffee is a little bit more, should we say, it is a little bit more kind of diverse, if you like. It's got a little bit more complexity to it, if you like, than the aroma would have you believe. But yeah, on top of that, on top of the kind of bready notes there's a wee bit of chocolate. There is a bit of a kind of sort of powdery kind of chocolatey sort of thing you get out of this one, like a sort of 40-50% kind of chocolate, 40-50% cocoa kind of chocolate there sitting in the middle of the palate. And on top of that, you get the nice smooth coffee bean there. You get that sort of fibrous-y type thing from the coffee beans, which is nice. And yeah, the coffee beans for me, they actually they intensify a little bit as you go to the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, but you do get a bit of that sitting there just in the middle of the palate, and you can feel it's almost like a kind of, as you move towards the edge of the kind of coffee bean areas of your tongue, you can feel there's a little bit more of a kind of toasty, brown sugary element just pushing its way out of the beer. So I really like how that side of things goes together, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You know, you will notice the maple syrup, I think, sits underneath the coffee, and it sort of just adds a level of sweetness to it, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know what kind of coffee to compare this to. I'm guessing maybe like a caramel macchiato or something. I don't know. As I say, I don't drink coffee. I love coffee, coffee beans and beers, but I just never drink coffee otherwise. But yeah, it does feel like the sort of maple syrupy, sweet brown sugars, the sweet oily brown sugars, are just sitting underneath the coffee, and then the coffee comes out on top. So yeah, in the middle of the palate, you do get a wee bit. The coffee doesn't come across as overly roasted. It comes across as very, very smooth. But then as you move, if you move to the edge of that, if you move to the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel the breadiness of the beer sort of thickens up a wee bit, and you get a wee bit more of a kind of toasty element there. Then the coffee beans kind of sit on top of that. Actually, you do get a more intense kind of coffee bean note on top of that. But again, the coffee beans you get out of this beer are a very, very smooth roast. There is an element of aromaticity to it as well. Pardon me, and I don't get much in the way of fruitiness out of the beer. There's maybe a very soft, fig or blackcurrant or something like that. There's a very, very soft fruity element to the beer there. So yeah, I'm just a bit surprised that the coffee beans they just come across as really, really smooth. Smooth roast, a little bit aromatic, but not too much. And then, just a wee touch of a kind of soft, figgy, kind of fruity quality to it. But yeah, the back third of your palate definitely feels a bit thicker. I think that the back third of the palate is quite a bit thicker than this one. And again, this is where the stout starts to show its more kind of bready side of things, if you like. So I really like how this part of the beer goes together as well. So yeah, if you start, the back third of your palate there is quite thick, but then you've got the border region, and then the thickness of the middle third of your palate is a little bit down here, but the coffee bean kind of smooths it over a little bit and makes the thickness transition just a little bit more. It makes it just a little bit more kind of gradual, if that makes sense. So yeah, you've got a really thick back third of your palate, you've got a kind of thinner middle third of your palate, but the coffee bean sort of smoothens out the transition, if that makes sense. The vanilla notes that I was picking up in the aroma of this beer don't really materialise in the actual flavour, if that makes sense. So I was a bit surprised about that, in honesty. But yeah, it does go together really nicely in a sense. Yeah, it's I really don't get any kind of vanilla notes out of this one, to be honest with you. But what I will say is the dryness of the beer, the kind of harshness of the coffee, if you like, and the roasty notes push their way out a little bit more the further that you go into the aftertaste with this beer. So this one is really interesting in that sense. I think this beer, it really does mellow out a bit more the more that you drink of it as your palate adjusts to it. But it's a solid, it's a beautiful beer, this one. It really is. So I'm just going to say thumbs up to Mikkeller once again. So yeah, we've taken a good bit of time to analyse the malty and adjuncty side of this beer. Let's focus on the hops. But yeah, Back corners of the palate then, definitely a good little bit of earthiness to the beer, but it does come across as quite smooth. That builds a good bridge with the other things that are going on with this in this beer. As you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal, and then as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of it definitely builds up a slightly more floral thing, but the earthiness and the herbal qualities of the beer do kind of spread forward. They do kind of push their way forward a little bit more actually, which I do like. Round the front curve of the palate, it's definitely a little bit lighter and more grassy, and you can get the tiniest little bit of zest out of that, but yeah, not a lot there. But yeah, I think that covers the green component of the beer. Obviously, as I said earlier, you can age this beer a bit more. That'll drop away. I didn't have much of a choice because the can got a little bit dinged and I didn't want to risk it. But yeah, anyway, front third of your palate then, fruity side of things. That border region between middle third and front third of your palate, again, you can feel the breadiness is a little bit thicker there. There's a wee bit of a very toasty bread crusty element there. Carafa malts. Think again, but the backbone of the front third of your palate is a very smooth kind of brown bready sort of thing. You do get that out of the beer. The wheat that's in this will be contributing to that. There is wheat in this beer, so the wheat will be contributing a lot to the smoothness of this one. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, let's focus on that. So yeah, on the fruity side of the beer then, it's actually a really nice and kind of rounded one. I don't get much in the way of like a raisiny sharpness out of the beer. You do get, towards the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a more kind of juicy plum out of it, and the plum actually spreads fairly far forward, and you do get an element of cakiness at the back of that front third of your palate. I think the beer does develop a little bit of a kind of brownie-like cakiness there too. But yeah, as you move further forward, the fruits actually remain quite rich. And I'd say for me that the majority of the fruit in this beer is blackcurranty and kind of plummy, if you like. So yeah, the back half of that front third of your palate is kind of more oily and plummy. And both of them are quite strong in a sense. I think the coffee notes really push their way out. The coffee in the aftertaste really starts to show its aromaticity more and a little bit of its own kind of red fruity character. So yeah, you do get a bit of a kind of pruny kind of element out of this beer as well, a wee bit of a dried kind of thing in the beer. But yeah, definitely plums, definitely prunes for me, and then on the front half of that front third of your palate, a more oily black berry sort of thing. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer I think is quite straight shooting, but it really works. I think this is a lovely beer in that regard too. But this beer, the smoothness of the coffee I think as well really starts to come out the further you go into the aftertaste. This beer takes a little bit of time to kind of evolve and show you its true colours, but it's definitely worth it. I'm glad that I bought this one. I am glad that I bought this one for sure. So yeah, just let this beer mellow out a little bit and just enjoy it. I think we've covered the flavour profile kind of as much as we can with this one, and I can feel it going to my head at 12% though. That's not a surprise. But yeah, mouthfeel to round off then. The thing is with this beer, it's very, very slick and very, very smooth. More slick than smooth, I would say though. Full-bodied, no question. Definitely a full-bodied beer. Kind of right in the middle of the full-bodied scale though, because it really does feel slick. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's a lovely, lovely tasting beer this though. It's just great. The mouthfeel really suits everything that this thing is going for. 473 millilitres though. An American pint is far too much of this. This beer for me would be far better in a you'd either be better to use this as a share can, or it's either a night ending beer, it's a share can, or it should be put into a 330 instead. Yeah, but again, it's different drinking mentalities. I like to taste different beers. I'm not a big drinker, if that makes sense. It feels like stupid to say that doing beer reviews, but I'm not a big drinker. I like tasting different stuff. That's one of the reasons I started the channel, of course. But yeah, for me, this is definitely a beer to share with someone because it's very, very rich. And even though it's very good, it is a little bit hard going in a sense. But yeah, the malty side of this beer, it's got a lovely smoothness to the behind it. It's got a good bit of sweetness in there. It's very, very well balanced. The fruits have got a nice little bit of juiciness and a little touch of oiliness as well. And then you've just got a little bit of hoppy bitterness to the beer. I think in terms of IBUs, we're talking, this beer must be about 70 IBUs or something like that. It doesn't strike me as being the full 100, but I think it is It has got a little bit of bitterness, both from the coffee, from the hops as well. So yeah, it does have a wee bit of bitterness to it, this one. But regardless, it's a lovely beer, and I would recommend that you try this, and I'm glad that I picked it up. So I think we can round off the review there then. This has been a bit of a longer one, but you know, when you get beers like this, sometimes they just strike you, and this one has most definitely been an enjoyable review, I think, from my perspective. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Traeblod, a 12% Imperial maple syrup and coffee stout from Mikkeller, the famous Danish gypsy brewery from Copenhagen in Denmark, now brewing in New York and over in California as well. But an awesome beer, this one. I would highly recommend that you try it out. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Mikkeller. We will no doubt return to these guys in the fairly near future, but yeah, definitely definitely have a look at what these guys are doing, because they're doing some great stuff. But this one, yeah, classic beer, and I've really enjoyed it, so I hope you did as well. Till the next time, it's Slangy just now. Thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Mikkeller, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. Cheers.